Hi! If you've watched my videos before, this won't come as a surprise to you, but if you're new here, I'm an artist. I've been dissatisfied with my art style for a year or so now, or more specifically, my rendering style. I like my sketches, but as soon as I add colour, I kind of hate them. A lot of the time, if you reach a point where you're not happy with your art, it's because your artistic eye or theory have developed further than your physical art skills have. So there's this weird disconnect between what you picture and what you create. Anyway, there are different things you can do and I won't list them all here. For now, let me share one of my favourites. Stealing from other artists. I'm kidding, please don't click off. I don't mean literally. Back in 2020, I did the Drawing in Different Styles challenge, but doing that challenge back then really helped me to improve my art. So without further ado, let's start with my current style. This is probably going to be a long one, so grab a snack, a drink, your sketchbook, and draw along with me. Just like the 2020 challenge, I'm drawing my character Sabine. She's a recurring character on this channel by now, and I enjoy drawing her. I'm actually drawing her in her circus coat this time, though the details will kind of come and go depending on the style and the references I could find. I think these days my style still leans more realistic, but it's definitely more stylized and has more character than it did back in 2020. I transitioned from doing pretty much completely traditional art to digital art in 2019 after a wrist injury made traditional rendering way too hard. So I was still pretty new to using Procreate when I did the last style challenge. Since then, other than general improvement, I found brushes I like better and I've just generally gotten better at picking and using colours. I noticed the colours from 2020 felt really dull and muddy. I still want to work on my colour theory, that's one of my main goals of this challenge, but it's still nice to see how far I've come. So here she is, my current 2026 style. Let's go to our first artist. The Starfish Face is an artist, a YouTuber, and the creator of the incredible webcomic Cast Off, a story about magical characters on the run who basically create a found family, and I love everything about it. If you haven't already, go and check out her webcomic and her YouTube channel. I discovered the Starfish Face through her YouTube channel maybe a year or two ago. I love her story times, advice, and most of all her characters. She is fantastic at creating characters and making them feel real. If that sounds like your thing, you'll definitely enjoy her work. As for her art style, I love how expressive it is. Not just in the character's facial expressions, but her poses, her composition, use of colour, it's just amazing. So Star uses thicker line weight than I do. I definitely feel like this helps with creating that sense of expression I mentioned. I really like the variation in line weight and how she gives areas in shadow thicker line art. There were a few characters in particular I referenced. Vector, the adorable protagonist of Cast Off, for his freckles. I also grabbed the colour of his hair and skin from the gorgeous zodiac design she created with him. I basically copied one of her D&D characters, Emery's pose, because it suited Sabine. I feel like Star would have been smarter than me and created a brush for the fringe on Sabine's epaulets. For the colouring, she uses cell shading, which I tend to avoid, mostly because I'm not great at it. So this was definitely a good exercise for me. I noticed that she's more reserved with highlights than I am. She goes deeper with the shading and keeps highlights more minimal. This is definitely something I need to take note of. One of my big issues is that I go way too hard on the highlights. The last thing I noticed is that she makes a character's pupils lighter than their irises. I usually use black, but I love how this looks. It definitely makes the eyes pop. This one will be familiar if you watched my last style challenge, because Dark Matter Nova was one of the artists I used for that. I love her style so much I wanted to try recreating it again. I discovered her work on DeviantArt originally. I'm really dating myself with that reference. I also follow her on Instagram. She does a lot of Toy Story, Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, and Nightmare Before Christmas art. There's a Disney-esque vibe to her style, but she definitely brings her own flair to it. Last time I recreated her sketchier style, so this time I decided to go for something a bit more rendered. The line art here was pretty thin with a little variation, so not too far out of my comfort zone. I probably said this last time, I love the blush she adds to a character's face. I think it's so cute and pretty, and I'm pretty sure that is something I took on board after the last challenge. For the rendering, there was minimal shading and pretty much no highlights that I could see, other than the hair, which I did struggle with because, as I said, I have a highlighting problem. I don't think this turned out great. I think I did a better job with her sketchier style in 2020. I do love the eyes though. Again, I noticed some characters had a lighter pupil, so I went with that. I really hope I pronounced this properly. Apologies if not, I did try to look it up. You've probably seen Linny Kaufman's work around, even if you don't realize it. She illustrates a ton of book covers, and that's how I discovered her work back in 2023 when I started working on my portfolio to try and get into book illustration. That's still a huge work in progress for another day. Anyway, I've had multiple friends compare my style to hers, which is a huge compliment. I don't necessarily agree. Obviously, I think her work is way more advanced, but I do appreciate it, and I really look up to her. The reason I think people make these comparisons is because her style is definitely closer to realism than anime or sort of Western cartoons or anything like that. So I think that might be why people think we have a similar vibe. Even though we do have that similarity, I found this piece surprisingly hard because of it. I kept slipping back into things I would do naturally, so would have to go back and look at my references to make sure I was staying true to Linny's style, not mine. Her line art is definitely thinner than mine, and there isn't much, if any, variation. I think this makes her style look super sleek and clean without feeling rigid. I also love how she does lighter lines in dark hair. I definitely make hair too dark, especially for print sometimes, so this is something I'd like to adopt for my own work. I think what surprised me the most was the lack of detail in the eyes. She just uses a flat colour without pupils, but it doesn't look off or unfinished or anything. She really makes it work. This ended up being one of the quicker styles to work on, even though I did struggle with it. I was so nervous for this one. I kept putting it off. Canary Witch is maybe my favourite artist, and I was very intimidated by her work. It's probably the most realistic and had the most rendering of all the styles I chose. I'd seen her work online over the years. She does some absolutely gorgeous Kingdom Hearts artwork. I subscribed to her Patreon for a while so that I could enjoy more of her work and downloaded some of her digital books, and they are absolutely beautiful. As I said, I was super inspired by her work back in 2023 and 2024. I mean, I still am, honestly, but I feel like looking at her work really helped me to improve my sketches, particularly drawing facial expressions. She has such a skill for making things realistic, but also stylized. For this challenge, I did kind of a combination of her sketchier style and more rendered style, so I'm not sure I did her justice, especially on the hair and clothes. I noticed she uses a sketchier brush for line art than I usually do. This was something I used to do, but again, I found it was kind of hard on my wrist. Her shading is so gorgeous. She does a mixture of kind of textured, harder shading as well as a more painterly soft shading. I think that makes her art really dynamic and appealing. In the end, I like how the face turned out, but the rest of her feels unfinished. She probably uses highlights the most out of anyone else on this list, but is still a lot more reserved with them than I am, making the most of them on the skin rather than the clothes. Ultimately, I feel like the style is probably the most similar to mine in terms of style and rendering, but there's a lot here I can learn from for sure. I probably don't have to introduce DrawingWiffWaffles if you're on the art side of YouTube. She's a big artist on this platform. She was offline for a while, but returned last year, I think, and it's been so lovely to see her work again. I love her art commentary and how she takes you through her art process in real time. I referenced her recent Disney wedding dresses video the most for this, as her style has changed a lot over the years, so I figured I'd pick something recent. We're back to some thicker line art, though I had to turn the stabilization on my brush right down to try and imitate her more kind of organic lines. It's not that her lines are wobbly or anything, they just look way more fluid than mine usually do. It might be the specific brush she uses, but this was the best way I found to replicate it. I did end up turning the stabilization up just a touch because my hand was too shaky. I like caffeine too much. I really enjoyed working on the line art for this one. I tried not to redo it too much and just go with my first pass. This made it less stressful. I don't think I've mentioned, but for the most part I've been color picking similar colours from the artist's work to try and get kind of the right tone rather than winging it like I did in my last video. So while she may not have the same colours every time, I feel like it makes the final result feel more like the artist I'm trying to imitate. It's also teaching me more about colours. Again, there was minimal shading for this one and only a couple of highlights on the face. This was another style where there were no pupils either, but they really work. It's also another one I'm not super satisfied with. I think I was trying to pull from too many different references, so the end result is kind of meh, but I do feel like I learned from it, which is the goal. This is a more recent one. I think I discovered this artist through YouTube Shorts. I love their style. It's so distinctive with the large eyes and the little sketchy marks. They seem to mostly paint traditionally on things like bags, shoes, etc., though they do have digital art as well. I'm kind of referencing the traditional designs more, even though I'm doing this digitally. I feel like the traditional work has more details I wanted to replicate, so that's why. So I tried to challenge myself by doing this all in one layer to start with, since when you're painting on a physical canvas, you obviously don't have the luxury of layers and an undo button. Oh yeah, I was trying not to undo anything and just go over mistakes as well. It was definitely interesting and made me work with more intention, but in the end, I kind of figured the point of this challenge, at least for me, wasn't to try and recreate the experience of traditional art, but more about actually picking up on the things I love about these styles. So I did give up and return to layers eventually. Also, quick note, I definitely made her skin and her hair too light to begin with. I do go in and darken them up though. So the line weight was very consistent, not too thin but not thick either. This was another one where I turned the stabilization down, mostly to try and replicate the traditional vibe. I really like the shading this artist always does around the nose and the eyes. I went for a blue eyeshadow to pop against Sabine's skin. Even though I don't usually use that colour on her, it looks really pretty. I also really like the little sketchy marks. I don't know what to call them. It adds so much character. It's another thing I've tried to do in the past, but I've been pretty inconsistent with it lately. As for the highlights, you know I love highlights at this point. They tend to do a single thin line for each area and some more sketchy marks. It definitely makes sense with this style not to go too crazy with the highlights. Erica is an illustrator, character designer, and YouTuber. Wait, why am I just realizing she's on YouTube? I know I've said this for like all of these artists, but I love how expressive her style is. It's super soft and stylized and cute, and it's so pretty. It was a challenge for me to try and draw eyes this big. I spent a long time after my teenage years trying to get out of more like manga and anime style, so I have an aversion to drawing large eyes, even though I still love them. I really like how she draws noses and how she emphasizes them with color. Again, I feel like I spent so long not drawing noses because manga, so I love styles like this that celebrate noses. What is this script? The line art and shading felt really soft, which I love. She uses lots of different colours within the skin, sort of purples and oranges and pinks and yellows to pick out undertones, which is something I've been working on lately, so this was a good study. What I noticed is that she makes the shading really deep, but doesn't overwork the highlights. You knew we'd end up back here with the highlights. And I think that's what I need to embrace. She makes all of the pupils and eyelashes black, which really pops against the softer coloured line art. With that, another style is complete. Emma is an artist I discovered back in August last year, I think. She's quickly become one of my favourite artists and YouTubers. I love her character designs, especially Clown and Cowboy and her hero characters and her time travel trio. Okay, so like all of her characters. If you love characters and character design, go check out her channel. She's inspired me so much these last few months and has played a huge part in helping me find what I love about drawing again. I also discovered her channel right around the time I was going through some big life changes, a new house and a new job, so I find her videos super comforting as well. I referenced Bella, Winifred and Rani for the design. I like how she uses blue on shaded areas. This is something I used to do, but I didn't like how it looked on my own art anymore, so I stopped. I think Emma does a great job, so hopefully I can learn from her. How many times have I said I used to do that, then stopped in this video? That's definitely something coming up a lot. I don't think I did the best job with her hair. I love how she renders hair, but I think I missed the mark this time. I finished by merging my layers down and adding a slight chromatic aberration. It's something Emma does a lot and I love how it looks. If you're a Swiftie, then you probably know Aleph for his amazing Tay-Realm art and universe, where he's personified Taylor Swift's albums. I love how soft and feminine the style is. It has hints of retro Disney princesses like Princess Aurora and Cinderella with the style of the hair, and also the softness of the limbs, but ultimately the style is uniquely his. I actually have his colouring book. I haven't coloured anything in it yet because I don't want to ruin it. I just love flipping through it. So for the artwork, his line art is thinner than mine. His work is also super detailed. He draws lots of the hair strands and you can really see how amazing his work is on these pieces. I felt like even though his style is very different to mine, this was a pretty comfortable style for me to work in. For the colouring, I noticed he uses pretty minimal shading and doesn't shade the hair, but he does use, don't say it, highlights! To finish this piece off, I added a little noise over the top to give it some texture, and then it was done. I'm sure, like many others, my first introduction to Alice Oseman was Heartstopper. I absolutely love the comic and the Netflix live-action adaptation. I was really drawn to Alice's style when I saw their work on bookshop shelves. I love how it's quite realistic but also stylized, and the colouring also feels really soft. They draw so many different body types, ethnicities, and represent characters with so many different gender identities. I think that's so important, and it's definitely something I need to work on more, particularly body types. Also, you might notice I'm referring to Alice as they. I saw on their profile that they go by she, her, or they, them pronouns. To be safe, I'm gonna go with they, them. Anyway, they seem to use a pencil style brush for their line art, so I found something similar to try and replicate that. I referenced Tori's expression because that gave me Sabine vibes. I love Tori, though when I read Solitaire it was way more intense than I was expecting. So good though. I also heavily referenced an older illustration of Frances from Radio Silence and some self-portraits Alice has done of themselves to get the hair texture right. For the colouring, I tried to recreate their more traditional style. I actually don't know if it is traditional or if they use traditional style brushes in a digital app, but either way, I really like the texture it adds, so I tried my best to replicate it. I'm pretty happy with this one. ABD Illustrates, or Alex, is a comic artist, storyboarder, and YouTuber. I think I discovered Alex from the Bards for Bards D&D charity series. He and some others did. If you haven't listened to that, it's so funny, and I fell in love with the characters, so you should go listen to that. You wouldn't be surprised to hear I fell in love with his art because I love how he draws expressions and poses. It's another style where his character designs and composition are just so on point. Working on his style, I noticed that his line art looks like it's done with a traditional fine liner. His lines are clean, but there are just a few places where it looks like there are deviations that you'd maybe only make if you were lining traditionally. At least that's what I picked up on. Again, I'm not sure if he does line art traditionally or if he uses a convincing digital brush to get this effect, but I really like it. It definitely feels more organic and keeps it from feeling stiff. For his colouring, he does a really nice combination of harder, almost cel-shaded areas and softer shading, which makes for a really gorgeous final piece. This was another style where I really like how he shades the nose. Actually, let me add that to my list of things I keep picking up on. Another interesting thing I noticed with his line art is that he tends to keep the main outline black, but for areas within a section, I'm not explaining this well. For example, where the collar of the coat touches the body of the coat, he uses coloured lines. I've not seen this much before, but I think it really helps parts of the drawing and the overall silhouette pop while keeping those less prominent areas subtle. So the detail is still there, but it's not overwhelming. I hope this makes some kind of sense. Last thing I noticed is the light pupils again rather than black. I never realised so many styles have this, so I might have to try it. We're on to our penultimate style. Gret Lusky, or Gretel Lusky, I really hope I'm pronouncing that properly, is a character designer, visual development artist, and she has a graphic novel. I think I discovered her style a few years back when I was researching artists for my portfolio. I love her sketchy style and the textures she uses in her rendering. I found the line art tricky to replicate as it's so organic. If I made a mistake though, I would try not to correct it and just continue the line to try and create something similar. I think this is a good way to work, honestly. It keeps your work from becoming too stiff. That's something that can definitely happen when you're going over a sketch with line art. This style feels almost retro, scrapbook, sketchy, but not messy. The way she does it looks so effortless, but it was definitely a more challenging one for me to recreate. She inspires me so much though, so it was really fun to give it a go. She also uses halftones in the shading and highlights, which I really like, as well as more of that chromatic aberration that I tried out with Emma Artley's style. Digital art, at least when I do it, can definitely feel kind of flat and lifeless sometimes, so I think adding textures like this can really liven it up without taking a ton of extra time. I don't know if I nailed this style, but I do love how she turned out. We've done it, we've reached the final style. This one is kind of an outlier since it's the only artist who doesn't have a big online presence. I mean, he probably does, but I discovered him through physical media. If you saw my 2020 art style challenge, you'll know that I recreated Tetsuya Nomura's style back then too. It's actually the one I was happiest with. If you're not sure who he is, Tetsuya Nomura created the concept art for the Final Fantasy games, The World Ends With You, and my favourite of his work, Kingdom Hearts. I won't get into it too much since I did cover this in my old video, but I discovered his work through playing Kingdom Hearts, and I credit him with getting me into drawing guys. I only ever used to draw girls. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to recreate the style as faithfully as I did last time. I remember really struggling with it in 2020. I even had to take a second pass at it back then. His style is super distinct, but I actually found it much easier this time. I used a sketch pencil for the line art, the same one I used for Gretlusky. The outer lines are also thicker. I had a hard time finding curly haired characters last time, but I was able to find some better references this go around, so that probably helped. In the sketch, I drew her grinning, mostly because I also drew her that way last time, but I decided to change it up and draw her mouth closed at the last minute for a bit of variety. In the end, I think I ended up improving on what I did last time. I mean, you'd hope I would. It's been 6 years, but I'm super proud of how this one turned out. And with that, we finished the style challenge together for the second time. Did you make it? Did I perfectly capture all of these styles? No, probably not. But I did achieve what I set out to do. I learned so much from working on these styles, about the things I like in art, how I could improve my rendering, areas I think I've gotten kind of lazy in on my own art, so I would say this video is a success. If you're in kind of an art rut, I would 100% recommend giving this a try. With that being said, this has been a long one, so thanks for sticking it out. Go grab a drink and a snack. If it's your birthday today, yes, you know who you are. Happy birthday! Like, subscribe if you want, all that jazz. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye!